Okay, Aristotle's Poetics Part 2. In the last class, we have already discussed first three chapters. At the very beginning, we'll try to review the previous class so that we can recall our memories what actually we have discussed. Just you have seen the images picture. It's a quite very close eyes, look and eagle eyes. Okay. What are the first three chapters? First three chapters. Very first one is what? The media of poetic imitation. Can anyone call that? What was actually what the matters we have discussed? What objects we have discussed in the very first one? The medium object. We know that every artistic things or the songs, dance, literature are represented through the three things. What are the three things? Can anyone recall your memory? Rhythm, language, and music. Language, music, and language. Okay? And at the same time, we have already mentioned that for flute or the what? For flute or what? Rhythm and music is important. For dance, rhythm is important and supported by music. And art or the poetry or something else is needed of what? Language. But what type of language in poetry is needed? Not all kinds of language. What kind of language we needed? We need a meter. Formal meter. Because Aristotle mentions that a scientist, a philosopher, a historian, a physician can also write something else in verse. So their writing should not be considered as what? Poetry. But whenever you have the formal meter, that is called the what? Poetry. In the second one is of what? Object of imitation. What are the objects? All the writers, all the poets, all the authors, what they are doing, they categorizes the whole world's people into two segmentations. One is good, another is bad. I mean, so what? The objects of the poetic imitations are either the characters must be good or bad. At the same time, each and every category of segmentation also divided into three portions. Why? Because they are representing three things. What are they? The character which is going to be depicted, that is, or that may be better than us, or worse than us, or as we are. Obviously, some characters must be better. Now, it's a question to you: why they try to depict some character which is better than us? Can anyone mention? Why a better character we should try to read? We are trying to read, or a author is trying to depict in his poem or in his writing.
To bring the
positive attitude, to grow, to encourage us, to show us the path. For example, a man who is successful one, Bill Gates, Sachin Tendulkar, or someone else, whenever we are reading their characters, we are being also inspired, and we can set up our goal in which way we can reach our goal and how we can go there and how we can also become successful one. Why the horse character? Because of what? To warn us, to aware us. For example, Hitler's character when is depicted, or Aristotele's character is depicted, portrayal, then what's happened? You can understand that ultimate result, ultimate destination of these two characters of what? They fell down severely. One is hated severely. So, if we involve such a task, such an activities like them, our condition will also be
The downfall that
downfall of them. Okay? And why the characters are shown as we are? Because sometimes we forget them where we are now, whether I am alone in my position or not. To compare it, to show it, the author tries to depict the same character as we are. These three things are depicted in what? Poetry. According to Aristotle, I mean, major way we can categorize to segmentation. One is good, another is bad. Each and every category has also three things, three portions. What are they? They are trying to present good character or better character, better character, worse character, or the same character as we are. In the third section is called of what? Manner of poetic imitation. We have already mentioned that each and every poetry must be presented in two ways. Either the narration or the action. Either the narration or action. For example, drama must be presented in which way? Through the narration. Through the action. Through the action. Okay, I mean, so what? Gesture, posture, dialogue, and their what? Practical or movement must have there. But in narration, poetry, epic, they must be presented through the narration. The short stories or the novel, they are also presented through the narration. This is called of what? Manner of the poetic imitation. So we have seen that the first three. First one is what? Media of the poetic imitation. Then second one is objects of the poetic imitation. Third one is what? Third one is manner of the poetic imitation. So anyway, today we'll discuss in details chapter 4 and 5. Chapter 4 and 5 of Poetics by Aristotle. Chapter 4. The origins and the development of poetry. The origins and development of poetry. Chapter 5. The rise of comedy and the epic compared with tragedy. Okay? So, chapter 4. The origin and the development of poetry. First of all, we will read some lines, lines from the text. Okay? The creation of poetry generally is due to two causes, both rooted in human nature. The instinct for imitation is inherent in man from his earliest days. So what does it mean? At the very first class, I mentioned that Plato says that poetry is nothing but the imitation of imitation. It is a reply. Obviously, human being imitates everything from his or her childhood. As we see that whenever we have some kids or the niece or the nephew, what they are doing there, what we are doing, they are trying to follow it. I mean, so what? From the early childhood, everyone is what? Imitating. He differs from the other animals in that he is the most imitative of creature. This is the remark of Aristotle that human being is different as they are the mostly they imitate every time, everywhere. And the other animal cannot do that. This is the differences between the animal and the human being because of their imitation. Clear? When it starts from the early childhood of a man. And he learns his earliest lessons by imitations. Obviously, as you see that, on your early childhood, your father tells that, or your mother tells, or your elder brothers, or your teacher tells that, oh, this is like, write it, this is A, this is B, and you are also trying to imitate. It means of what? We have started our learning through the imitation. We have started our learning, education through the imitation. And it starts very early childhood. So, two ways men can be gathered. One is imitation, another is through the experience. Through the experience. Okay. Also inborn all of us is the instinct to enjoy works of imitation. So this is the inborn quality as well to some extent. In which way? You have seen that each and everyone has all the members of a family have a what? The same trait. we are saying that as his father is doing that or her father is like that, so she must be like that, or she or he will must get some of quality of his parents. What does it mean that in word we are imitators? So we cannot avoid it, though Plato mentioned that we can avoid it, okay? Then what happens in actual experience is evidence of these, for we enjoy looking at the most accurate representation of things which in themselves we find painful to see, such as forms of the lowest animals and of corpses. The reason for this, that learning is a very great pleasure, not for philosophers only, but for the other people as well. However, limited their capacity for it may be. So, education obviously is a pleasurable task. It's a pleasurable task. There is no doubt. There is no doubt. So, what's happened? Why he has mentioned that? Ordinary people also like to study or read something else for their pleasure. It doesn't mean that it should be confined to the philosophers. It is also the ordinary people. Okay, but why they are reading? The process of their reading is also imitation. The process of their reading is also imitation. Then they enjoy, sing likeness, because in doing so they accurate information. Another example, we can say that nowadays in Facebook, we say whenever people say that given in status with a Bangladeshi flag, and some other also trying to do that. And we are trying to once upon we say that whenever a man started wearing a what? Plastic bands, and the other people are also following. What does it mean that? This is their own task, okay? Own task. Okay, next. For if by any chance the thing depicted has not been seen before, it will not be the fact that it is an imitation of something that gives a pleasure, but the execution or the coloring or some other such cause. So, the thing which was not familiar to us, which is not presented to us, or which is not existed in the real world, and this is the first time we have seen that, presented to us, that cannot give us what? Pleasure at all. That makes us only for the excitement. And whenever we started using it, in that time of what? Will be experience, support through the experience, we'll try to what? Be imitator. We'll try to be the imitator. That is the fact. Support. Without imitation, you cannot what? Be pleased. You cannot be pleased. That is the important, okay? Next. The instinct for imitation is natural to us, as is also a feeling for music or for rhythm. And meters are obviously detached sections of rhythms. Starting from these natural aptitude and by a series of, for the most part, gradual improvement on their first efforts, man eventually created poetry from their improvisation. So, one thing, Charles Babbage discovered invented the computer, we know that. Nowadays, number of changes we have seen in computer, regarding the computer. What does it mean that? The improvisers are of what? Imitators.
They
imitated the previous idea. Improvise something else. They imitate their ideas, their experiences. What does it mean that? It's also the process of imitation. Process of imitation. Of what? What you are doing, everything is completely imitation. For example, you have seen a type of clothes or camisole or whatever you can say, and you want to change it. What does it mean that?
We are
You are imitating. Just you are adding something or reducing something. Doesn't mean what? You are the imitator. Imitation is there. Okay.
just
Modifying them, improvising them. However, poetry songs branched into, so it is also of what? This is the origin. What is the origin? Imitation is the what? Origin of poetic imitation. Or we can say that the creation of the poetry at the very first line, it is given that due to the two causes both rooted in human nature. So the origins of poetry is of what? Human nature. What is human nature? To imitate. To imitate. Imitation is the human nature. Without imitating anything else, you can do anything else. So this is the main what? Fact or the root cause of the origin of poetic imitation. So or the poetry. Now we are going to discuss the development of poetry. The chapter has two segmentation. At the title is giving that what the origins. So far we have discussed what the origins. Now we are going to discuss the development of poetry. However, poetry is soon branched into two channels according to the temperaments of individual poets. What is the temperament of the individual poets? For example, in Bangla, we can say that there are two writers. One is Rabindranath, another is Kazi Nazrul Islam. Their temperament are not the same. As a result, they have written different kinds of poems. Rabindranath's temperament and Nazrul's temperament is not the same. One comes from the Jamindar family, wealthy family, or the landlord family, and his intention is to produce such things. Whereas Nazrul comes from a suppressed, oppressed family, poor family, rootless family. So his voice is revolutionary against the tyrannical. Okay? That's why we have seen that two branches of the poetry. Similarly, here Aristotle claims that from his research. That is of what? The poetry branches depends on what? Depend on the temperament of the individual poets. Okay. Another way we can say that, suppose we urge you to do something else, but you will also contribute. In which way? Because your emotion and my emotion will not be the same. So the contribution will also be the different, though our aim is the same. Okay. So it depends on our individual temperaments. Individual poet's temperament. The poems or the poetry has been segmented or branched. The more serious-minded among them represented notable actions and the doing of the noble persons, while the more trivial wrote about the meaner sort of people. Thus, while one type wrote hymns and panegyric, these others began by writing invectives. So you have seen that. One is the meaner types of sort of people. Another is what? Hymns or the panegyric, admirable. Their temperament should not be the same. One is so much serious. They are dealing with a serious matter. Whereas the other is trying to highlight the mean things, trivial things, worthy things, or they are trying to satirize something else. So their temperament would not be the same.
So there is one question. What is the meaning of panegyrics?
Admirable.
And hymns?
Hymns is actually a song. You know that it praises through the songs. It praises to a God. These are began by writing invectives. We know of no poems of this kind by any poet earlier than Homer, though it is likely enough that many poets wrote them, but from Homer onwards examples may be found. His own Margites, for instance, and poems of same type. It was in such poems that the iambic meter was brought into use because of the appropriateness for the purpose. So Homer is the first man. The development. What is the development? You have seen that Homer first time successfully used of what iambic meter. In the last class we have already discussed what iambic meter is. Okay, iambic meter. Before Homer, everyone tries to used to use trochaic meter. Trochaic meter before Homer. So he successfully added it in poetry. Use of what? Iambic pentameter. If the question anyone asks you who used first iambic meter successfully, you must say that Homer, and before him it was what? Trochaic. Okay, and it is still called the iambic today, from being the meter in which they wrote iambs or the lampoons against one another. In this way, it came about some of our earlier poets because writers of heroic or some iambic verse. But just as Homer was the supreme poet in the serious style, so serious style, regular meter, regular scale, who is the supreme boss, who is the supreme writer? Homer is the supreme writer. Okay? Okay. Then you can escape this one, go to the next one. It is beyond my scope here to consider whether or not tragedy is now developed as far as it can be in its various forms, and to decide these both absolutely and in relation to the stage. Both tragedy and comedy had their first beginning in the improvisation. I mean, so what? This is a time. I mean, so Homer's ages, it is a time of what? Improvisation of what? Tragedy and comedy. Already we have mentioned that what tragedy is, what comedy is. Later on we will also discuss it from this book as well. The one originated with those who led the dithyramb, and we have already mentioned that what is the dithyrambic poets, okay? Poems. The other with of what? Leaders to the Poetic songs, which still survive today as traditional institution in many of our critics. Little by little tragedy advanced. Little by little tragedy advanced. Each new elements being developed as it came into use, until after many changes it attained its natural form and came to a standstill. Aeschylus was the first to increase the number of actors from 1 to 2. So what does it mean that before Aeschylus, how many characters are portrayed in a tragedy? Only a single character. He first time added another one. I mean, so what? 2 characters we have seen, 2 persons we have seen, or the 2 characters we have seen where? In a tragedy, okay? So this is another development. Another development of what you have seen. 1 to 2. Cut down the role of the chorus. So if you read any ancient classical tragedy, you will see that it starts with a chorus, and frequently the chorus are appearing. Even if you read the Iliad, you will see that chorus is there. In modern period, we have seen that this is less used. And who reduced the role of the chorus? Aeschylus, okay? He's a great dramatist. He reduces it and gives the first place to the dialogue. Because through the dialogue he tries to represent everything. But chorus is something. In Dr. Foster's we have seen also that. Okay, chorus of what? Chorus always tries to introduce the background, the destination of your drama, etc., etc. Okay, so that's why these are what? These chorus play vital role in drama. But he reduced it. Without using chorus, he tries to what? Add dialogue. Sophocles is then another one who changed it. So 3 changes we have seen that. Homer is the first man who used iambic instead of trochaic. And Aeschylus he changed to, first of all what? Instead of one actor he added 2 characters, and
instead of
chorus he had changed the part using dialogue. Okay? Thank you so much. Sophocles introduced 3 actors and painted the scenery. So Sophocles added another one. So another character we have been seen there. We have been found there. Okay? And of what? A scene. I mean, so what? Scenery you're seeing, if you have seen that any scenery as a background of the drama on the stage, what's happened? You can easily predict what is about. Okay? As for the grandeur tragedy, it was not until late that it acquired its characteristics, straight lines, when progressing beyond the methods of satiric drama. Satiric drama is what describes, and later we will see it. Okay, it describes slight plots and comic diction, and we know that to be to satirize something with humor and some comic elements, irony, these are mandatory. Okay. Here he also, Aristotle also finds the same thing. He described a slight plot, I mean so not serious plot, lucid of the plot. Comic diction, I mean support, with humor must have there, with irony. And its meter changed from the trochaic tetrameter to the iambic. It is another development which we have already mentioned. In comedy, Homer changes where? In tragedy. But at the same time, this is the period when in comedy we have seen also what? Instead of trochaic, they have used what? Iambic pentameter or iambic meter. Okay. At first the poets had used the tetrameter because they were writing satire poetry which was more closely related to the dance. But once dialogue had been introduced, whenever it was dance, they used it was a what? Tetrameter. When dialogue was introduced in that time, tetrameter, role of the tetrameter has been reduced as well. Okay, so I think you have understood the chapter. There are two portions. First one is what? The origins. What is the origin? Can one mention? Origin of poetry is what? Man in nature. Man in nature. You have seen that very human nature. In human nature, everything you will find in human nature. What is the human nature? To imitate. Imitation. Tendency of to imitate others. And it has what starts? It starts from where? From early childhood. Or we can say that it also to some extent we have found that in our inborn qualities, inborn quality. And he also mentions that without having a what? Without having the tendency of imitation or which is not familiar to us, in that case we are not getting any pleasure at all. In the next portion he has mentioned what? The development of poetry. Now we can discuss in details from that. First of all, poetry in general seems to have sprung from two causes, each of them lying deep in our nature. Our nature means human nature, okay? So everything, two causes, and both causes, one cause is what? Imitations to the early childhood or the inborn quality. Another is what? Through our experience. But your experience, you are saying that sir, it is my experience. From my experience I am telling. When you are mentioning, what does it mean that? It means that you are imitating something else. You are something else. For example, one of the students, he or she always makes the excuse. And he or she is doing the same thing. One day, the teacher can say that, yes, my experience is that today you may not do it. Why? Because her or his behavior is completely different. What does it mean that it is also imitation? It is also what? Imitation. It is called of what? Deep in our nature. Got my point? So, first, the instinct of imitation is implemented in the man from childhood. Our differences between him and other animals being that he is the most imitative or living creature. Through imitation, learns his earliest lessons. And no less universal is the pleasure felt in things imitated. So what does it mean that? No one is compared to human being and they are distinguished from the other for what reason? Because of the imitation. It is their own nature. It is their own nature. All of us, can anyone mention here that I'm not intend to imitate anything else? Obviously, you cannot claim it. But you say that obviously, sir, I imitate with some tendency of what? Improvisation. or to change the shape, it's active. It acts something else. Imitation is one of the instinct of our nature. Next, what is that second one? There is the instinct of the harmony and rhythm. Meters being what? Manifestly sections of rhythm. Persons starting with this natural gift developed by degrees, their special attitudes till their what? Root improvisation gave birth of poetry. So it is saying we have already discussed. Next one, origin of poetry is in the two natural instincts of imitation, the delight of the words what? The delight in words of imitation. So when you are imitating something else, it means of what? You are getting you are delighted. You are delighted. Is there any alternative way? No. For example, one stands the first position, and whenever you also stand the first position, what's happened? You are also enjoying yourself. What does it mean that? Why? Because you can understand that as he or she stands the first position and his life is completely successful, so I can also be a successful one as I have already stood the first position. What does it mean that? It is your own experience. I mean, so what? Imitation. The action of the imitation, nothing else. Is it clear? Jashim, clear? Then what? Rhythm and harmony, natural to man. Rhythm and harmony is a natural to man, to spaces of poetry, tragic and comedy. So through the tragedy, through the comedy, we are trying to imitate something else. Okay? So in imitations, through the imitations, we are expressing two things. One is of what? Tragic, another is comic. Why the tragic and comic is mentioned? First of all, tragedy deals with what? Seriousness. And there is comic is of what? Funny things. Relaxation. Or the correction or satirization. Or humorous way something is presenting. I mean, so what? There is no seriousness. I mean, so what? Obviously, each and every one has two parts. Either you are so much serious or you are of what? Comic. Next, classification of poetry in the basis of manner. It is one of the basis of manner of imitation that poetry is classified as epic or narrative and dramatic. Okay. In the dramatic representation, the characters do all the speaking and the act the story. Obviously, in dramatic representation, obviously we are trying to what? Speaking, and at the same time of what? We are trying to act. Without action, without act of what? You cannot present in a drama at all. In the case of narrative, the poet speaks throughout in the same character. Some, like Homer, narrate the story as well as tell it through the characters who speak in dialogue. What does it mean that? You can understand. In the case of narration, the poet speaks throughout the same character. Sometimes he acts, sometimes he dialogue. Okay, narration is there. And next one is what? In dramatic poetry, the action is carried out the dramatic personage. Okay. Next one, what? Aristotle sums up the distinction between the fine arts on the basis of medium, subject and what manner. Poetry is different from the other arts because of the medium. Because of the medium, we can already mention very first chapter. There are three things is very important. First one is of what? First one is rhythm, music and language. Because of the medium, it is different than the other. Because rhythm and music need support in song, and rhythm is needed only where in dance. But language is essential for what? For poetry. That's why it is a distinction difference between the poetry is different from the other arts because of the medium. Poetry is further divided into dramatic and narrative according to the manners of its imitation. Then Aristotle classifies dramatic poetry into tragedy and comedy on the what? Clear classification is shown in this character. Obviously we have seen that these are not the similar things. These are the one always deals the serious dramaticness, and deals with what? Funniness always, okay? Or the satirical elements, or the biases or the policies of the society or of a person. So, because of the nature of the presentation and the aim, these are two types of poetry. Here you have seen that poetry means not the poem actually. Poetry means of what? Branches of the literature. I mean what? He has mentioned either epic or what? Drama, okay? Okay. The psychological causes of the origin of poetry. Aristotle traces the origin of poetry, or more strictly dramatic poetry. It will be noticed that it is to dramatic poetry Aristotle now largely confines himself. He continues that the origin of poetry lay into natural instinct. It will be noticed that he also adds a third cause. What is the third cause? First, three causes we will discuss one after another. The first is the natural human impulse to imitate things. These can be observed in childhood. Obviously, we have already mentioned that from the early childhood we are trying to be an imitator. Okay, we cannot escape it. The second instinct was that of the natural delight in recognizing a good work of imitation. I mean, so what? That is our experience. That is our experience. When you are mentioning that, sir, I recognize you. How you can recognize? Because of your experience. Because of your experience. Otherwise, you cannot recognize something else. Okay? Oh, sir, I have seen such a thing there. What does it mean that? It is your experience. The experience in which way come? Because of your imitation. So, it means of what? Everywhere we have seen that it is our human nature. It is human nature, or our nature means imitation. Then of what? It was for the reason that even the imitation of ugly objects gives delight. There is an element of what? Recognition that I have already mentioned. Finally, a third cause of what?
Harmony and rhythm.
The instinct for harmony and rhythm leads to the meters of poetry. Thus, we see that the origin of poetry lay in our natural instinct. So, third cause is of what? The harmony and rhythm. Okay. So, this is all about chapter 4. We can repeat or we can sum up the chapter 4. The chapter 4 of what? Has how many parts? 2 parts. First one is what? Origin of the poetry, and second one is the development of poetry. What is the origin of poetry? Human nature. Human nature. Is there any doubt? No doubt. Why? Because he mentioned that there are 3 regions, 3 steps. From the early childhood or inward, we are imitator. We like to imitate. Second one is through our experience, whereas we can say that we recognize it. For the recognition, you need the experience, you need the imitation, ability to imitate something else. And third one is what? Harmony and rhythm. And if we sum up this, we can say that beyond imitation, we can do anything else. I mean, so what?
The
origin comes from the nature of the human being. Nature of the human or human nature. The development. There are a lot of developments branched. We have seen that. First of all, we have seen that Homer is a supreme poet in the development in poetry. In which way? He is the first man who successfully and skilled way used iambic instead of trochaic or something else. And Aeschylus, he adds 2 characters instead of 1. At the same time, he reduced the role of chorus to dialogue and use a dialogue. Okay. Later on, what we have seen, Sophocles, he adds more character. I mean support. Instead of 2, he uses how many characters? 3 characters. At the same time, he first time uses the background scenery. Because the background scenery has some power to speak what the drama is or the poetry is about. Okay. Next one, what we have seen that. In comedy, we have also say that before H, there are some of what? Some of use of trimeter, tetrameter. Because of what? In that time there is a dance. But in their time, what's happened? They reduce it.
They added
Satirical elements and something else, okay? And at the same time, we have seen that there are two major segmentation. One is what? Tragedy, another is comedy, okay? The nature. At the same time, they have already mentioned that it depends upon what? The individual poet's temperament. Based on the individual poet's temperament, the poet also be divided. Because every poet's temperament is not the same to the other. As we have already mentioned, two poets' name, okay? Their temperament are different. That's why their writing is also different. That is the all about chapter 4.